And hey, Parent Projects business community is Tony Sievers at Parent Projects. I'm really, really excited today to bring a special business and focus episode together with Emil Jimenez from Mindbank.ai. Emil and I met years ago in conversations around how artificial intelligence, in fact, one of my first early conversations about artificial intelligence and some of the value proposition it brings to helping families, where my mind immediately went back to understanding as businesses, how can we use that? What are the value of synthetic version or digital versions of our employees, and how do you get to that, and how do you unlock it? Is there personal performance capabilities? All in all, I'm going to wrap this conversation up and say we've talked about sourcing A players out of the top grading side, which is kind of a stretch and difficult for a lot of small to medium sized businesses to get to. I think Emil and Mindbank AI is going to make that much more achievable for us in business. Stay tuned for this Business in Focus with Emil Jimenez and Mindbank AI. It starts right now. Since 2009, Emil Jimenez, an American-born, award-winning marketing expert, has spent the time pouring himself into understanding this transformational idea of grabbing a legacy in life. And that has evolved like a lot of our businesses have. For him, it has gotten into Mindbank AI, which is a wonderful digital tool in order to build a digital or a synthetic version of us, of one of us, in order to understand where we're at, some professional development aspects, maybe even start to pour on levels of legacy and building and continuity for a business plan. Emil, thanks for joining us today. On the In Focus, we're going to jump right into your project and your business.
So Mindbank.ai uses psycholinguistic models to create a dashboard of your mind. So the idea started was inspired by my daughter, actually, as a 4-year-old little girl playing with Siri. And I said to myself, today she speaks to Siri, but one day I want her to speak to me like this. So I started figuring out a way for me to store my mind and be able to have a conversational agent that is me. What I realized, though, is that this data is extremely valuable because now we can analyze who we are from a linguistics perspective. And linguistics tells a lot about your personality, who you are, your education. So many things can be extracted from your linguistics. And we've been able to pull information, create a dashboard of your mind. So if you can imagine now a Google Analytics dashboard, if you open your bank account, it's got a dashboard. Everything's got a dashboard except you. But now you can create a dashboard and track your changes. How do you change? And we like to say Mindbank AI makes everyone an A player, because now you can see where you are, where you started, and how you've changed, how learning actually has an impact into your personality, all these things that can measure change in people.
I love the similar terminology, and I think we came to it with an understanding. Top grading wasn't something you've thought about, but we've talked about that before. An essence in the top grading methodology is strong backgrounding when you're pulling somebody together, and a lot of that is to understand where they've been throughout their whole career with some level of context by talking to other people that provide that context at every step along the way of their career, in order to sort through and understanding that there's ups and there's downs, and even at bad jobs or at bad experiences and work experiences they've had, there's somebody that they either worked with, somebody that worked for them, or someone that they worked for that's going to be able to provide a great context as to what they learned out of that or how they saw them go through that, which is something that A players have in common. A players, two big distinctive reasons we like to hire them. One is that they're constantly evolving and perfecting just kind of them and their ability to synchronize what they're going after in life with the team, and they want to be a part of that and find that mutual side of that. And the second is that they network with other people who are like-minded. So when you spend the time and the energy as a business understanding if somebody is an A player or that really that top level, generally they're going to be connected to other A players, which can accelerate longer term great hires and other people in that synergy who are looking and open to the idea of, well, I can master me while pouring myself into this greater thing that I'm trying to achieve. And that alignment with the company means that nobody's taking advantage of the other person. We both have mutual gain out of working together to what we're doing. And that seems to be now working and collecting this information. You're providing context, like immediate context from on that person, on who that person is, and maybe where they came from. Am I kind of picking up what you're throwing down?
Yeah, and if you think about it, what you're looking at in the past is that those points of reference. You're gathering data of that person in different situations to kind of create a profile of how will this person react in this situation? How will they person, in different situations? What did they learn? How did they change from these things, right? So you get that from those types of. I wasn't familiar to top grading until you mentioned it today, and I'll look into it a bit more. But you see it in personality tests. These organizations pay hundreds for you to take a 3-hour test to get a personality profile.
Yeah.
We do that in about 5 minutes, roughly. Right. With 5 minutes, we have a pretty good idea of who you are. Obviously, the more data you put in, the better, the more context we have. But what we're able to do is really speed up the process tremendously for the sourcing part. We're also able to say, okay, what is your organization? What is the personality of your team? Because sometimes people might not fit for whatever reason.
Right.
So they're a great candidate. They're just not a great candidate for your company,
That
right?
is, or for your team of where the company's at. Maybe it's the management team, or they can't work under that group at this time.
Exactly. And you just have to come to that realization. Are they a right fit for the job? Are they a right fit for the team/organization? These are all questions you have to ask yourself.
Yeah.
First and foremost, who am I as an individual? What is my personality and how do I fit into the team are really strong reference points. And what we say is like Mindbank.ai makes everyone an A players because it's about everyone. It's not just about the individual. It is about everyone and learning from each other and growing. And you touched upon a thing about A players. In order to become an A player, you have to be okay with failure
Yeah.
and strive for improvement because you're never. You could always be that little bit better, right? But you could always be a little bit better. You always learn and mess up, and that constant reinforced learning is what makes us better.
It takes a lot of pressure too off of having to always get things right. When you can create an environment, I know I value an environment where whether I'm raising kids or anything else, where they can fail kind of safely without destroying everything off of that. But you give them that ability because, man, you learn. I just think you learn a lot from that. That I think Thomas Edison, right? I didn't fail 10,000 times. I learned 10,000 ways not to make a light bulb. Type of aspect to it.
I heard one yesterday where it took me 30 years to be an overnight success.
I love that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But it is the that being retrospective is really fascinating. And the fact that it can be something that you could actually touch pretty quickly for different core employees or for all your employees across the board. I've seen it in personalysis tests, overlays. People use I'm trying to think of the 4 color quadrants that are really common. Yeah, yep. Those obviously they're they're time tested. It's worked through. There's great value off of that. However, our brains can still only slice that up so many ways. And when you get into the use of the application of augmented intelligence, now you're talking about a system that can dice up those dimensions of that data and the context of that data into thousands, like where we might just look at it 2 or 3 different ways or 4 different ways. It can really slice it up a lot of different ways to fix time and point or relationship to this thing or relationship to this new event that's happened, or how they're going to perform when they lost a loved one, which may be a monstrous shift because now they've got this emotional touch, things that we just can't obviously fathom yet.
Yeah. And then the key context here is time, in my opinion,
Okay.
because we evolve.
Yeah.
We're never static creatures. When and we have to understand that, how do you move? How do you change? How do you adapt? How are you 6 months ago versus today? And it's not about trying to change you. It's really about making you more self-aware so that you can understand yourself, because that's really where it comes. If you have that inner drive, right, then you can really constantly improve. And one of the things I always look for is intellectual curiosity, right? Because you're always looking at new solutions, new ways of doing things. And yeah, and the other thing I look for is passion. Are you passionate about what you do? Because that's going to fuel the fire if there's no money.
Yeah.
If you're a small business, hey guys, we know it's a lot of times it's paycheck to paycheck, and you got to have the people who are passionate about your story, the vision, to say, okay, I'm all right for another month. Let's get this through.
That's
And
when I was in San Francisco last week for the Tech Crunch this year and Disrupt, and one of the core great founder got up, and one of the about 16 of us having a conversation, and he was talking about looking at when you're building that team, especially a small to medium sized businesses working through problems like this, you've got teams and you have teammates and you have mercenaries. You have to be really cautious when you get into them, because they'll look a lot of the same. One way that you know the difference between others is when things get tight. Those mercenaries they DD them out, they're gone. They're out of there, man. They're moving to that next thing, right? And they're aggressive. Look, you are just being able to vet out and find those teammates over time, I think is really highly valuable. Yeah, I'd like to really quickly just jump down and see what you guys are about. You guys have a commercial spot that you guys work for B2B. So let's throw that up here, take a look at that, and then come back and have a discussion. So stay tuned. We're going to take a look at this. Here's Mindbank.ai.
Mindbank. Let's go beyond.
Welcome back here. We're talking about sourcing A players. We've got Emil Jimenez joining us, CEO, founder of Mindbank.ai. Emil, thanks again for helping us break down. Okay, so we've worked really hard to start recruiting and to pull in some folks. Most of us as leaders have understood. We've been able to sort through. We talked about mercenaries versus teammates. We've got good teammates that sit on there. One of the first problems I hear people really getting positive about if they're going to lean into this AI is they need productivity. Like they need another version of this guy who is a rock star in this particular element. They think they know why they're a rock star or what that element is, but I mean, data might be able to even refine that and find where that person could perform best. And then can I get copies of them to work at that? At the same side, as a leader, you don't ever want to commoditize your people, right? Human resources is about understanding that these are resources who are human beings for your organization, and they require pushing into and building up and developing them and providing them some way to measure the positive change in their life and the negative change and to root that out, and maybe even provide some level of therapy and professional development. How is it that you see a good application of Mindbank for a company that might be trying to maybe start with that first step? I can motivate my team to get in here because this guy, I need 3 of him and I've got 1, and I need to get the difference between him. And then I got this gal over here who's killing it, my sales team. And I need to understand that and have a second version of that. How would that come into play for you guys practically as a business owner?
so practically what we do with some businesses is that we say, okay, what is the digital twin of Tony? They're the ones who tell us, I need like 20 Tonys, right? And we're like, okay, so what makes Tony Tony, right? If you look at a resume, right, you've got it, it's very clear, like you've got the hard skills, experience, education, blah, blah, blah. That's quite easy to copy paste. The hard part is the personality, the style, it really comes down to personality, really. That's a hard thing to clone, copy, and copy paste. But there is a certain style of person, right? And there are certain metrics that you measure, for example, for leadership, for openness, and things like that. So what we do is that we say, okay, who is Tony? Let's do a profile of this person from a soft skills perspective. The hard skills are quite easy to measure. The soft skills we measure, and then we look at the candidate pool. And through the interview process and the Q&A, the conversation, we take that conversation, we put it into our models and go magic happens. And the magic says, okay, of these 20 candidates, these 3 are the closest to Tony. We're not saying they're copy paste, but hey, if you're going to pick 3 out of the 20, hard skills exactly the same, experience the same, et cetera, interview process, we would say these are the 3. And we're testing this out right now with companies, big companies, because what it does, it reduces the sourcing time and the churn, or our prediction is that it reduces the churn by at least 20%.
And that's huge because churn, the wrong hire is like, I've heard those numbers as high as 8 times an annual salary. And what
It literally is. If you do the math on that, right? It
Yeah.
takes roughly 3 months for you to train them, get them onboarded, and get a feel for the clients, et cetera, et cetera. Another 3 months to kind of figure them out. Hey, this is really not the right fit, And then 2 months probably severance or some kind of,
yeah,
closing. Yeah. And it's not. And then you pay probably a sourcing fee to get the talent. So it adds up, right?
yeah, you got other people to train them. You've got the loss
Ah,
and the stagnant of the business working through. I mean, it's
productivity is
expensive.
lost, just
Oh,
all across the board. So
yeah,
that's one, just on the sourcing side. That's definitely one. And if you look, there is a danger to that though, and we always tell our clients there is a danger, because what happens is that you start becoming one type of entity, right? Within one, it might, the same people might conflict at sometimes.
yeah,
It really depends on the position. It depends on the autonomy. So this works really well for like a car dealership, right? That it's like, they're a salesperson and it's a car, the product is more or less the same. Then it really comes down to personality, how well you can relate to people very quickly, right? Real estate salesman, very similar. Autonomous, right? They're lone wolves to some extent. And how quickly can they close the deal, get the booking, that's a sales process.
yeah.
If you're trying to do a matrix organization where you have to work with a lot of people and different teams selling an enterprise product, that's where you might come into a problem, because the sales guy pushing or really open might not really relate well to the technical engineer that has to answer those questions. And so you got to be careful with that, what kind of relationship you build.
Yeah.
But ultimately it really comes down to what the clients want, right? What they think is best for their organization.
How generally is that? How is that information collected from? As you're starting to build that, is that Mindbank.ai on the other side, on the commercial side, is very like voice heavy, right? They're recording, they're answering questions, working through things that way. Is that how you envision this product working as well for you guys on the B2B side?
So how it's working right now on the B2B side is just like that. And in fact, what we have is that on the B2B clients have 2 accounts. One is their personal AI, the personal email account. So the personal data about their lives, how they met their wives, et cetera, is on their personal account. But the B2B account, so they just switch an account and it'll be on on their business email, where it's more business related content and questions. So that database is what's, let's say, shared with the corporation on an anonymized level.
Sure.
So all they'll see is this particular person has this personality, right? These values, let's call them, like numbers. Doesn't talk about really what they said or anything like that. So that's the let's say the data gathering, and it's just questions. You could ask a question about anything, literally, and based on the answer, we can gather enough information to tell you quite a lot about the person. All we need is about 3 or 4 minutes of data, which is roughly 400 words, 500 words, right? Not much. And we have a pretty good score. On the candidate side, you can pull it right from the resume. To be honest, how you have these little
Right.
snippets of like the cover letter, right? That's one way. The best is definitely interviews, because it's much more open. So nowadays, everyone does tele interviews. These things are recorded. Just we basically push that into our models. We know who the speaker is. We know who the author is, and pull the dashboard from that.
Yeah.
So it's quite simple, and then we match Tony to the candidate pool.
I love that. I think that is a great opportunity also just to see the delta too between how somebody is going to perform I think it's how somebody's going to perform under one set of situations, but maybe predictively understanding if there's a change in situation, what's that going to look like, right? And that'd be, you almost get, well, not almost, flat out, you're going to be able to get into prediction at some point in time as it's seen things work ahead in certain personality traits. I got to imagine the data set's going to get pretty darn good at prediction, and maybe even what to this, what do you need to offer to them in order to be able to get through that in the most advantageous way as possible, right? What type of professional development might assist and move them into this new change or dynamic of their job or workforce?
Yeah, that's we're looking into that when it comes to mergers and acquisitions,
That's
actually.
exactly where my brain went. I mean, yeah, right. And you're trying to determine, and that's um, it can humanize a very difficult situation that might be very subjective in the first place today when somebody goes in. That could be just related to a very quick relationship. I mean, it gets ugly, and I've been around those, been in the throes of them. Um, but to have that opportunity to predictably maybe know where you can place everybody and cross leveling, especially cross leveling in an organization, so you don't have people hanging out there so long waiting for the other boot to drop, but instead be able to remap where their glide path goes to the next thing. And maybe the next thing's, in the organization, or maybe that next thing's going to be out of the organization with all predictive understanding. And so you've got to help them make that transition in a manner in which upholds the ethics and the ethos of your company.
Yeah, definitely. It's a tough one, and I don't quite by any means we have not solved it, but we know that
Right.
the data can be there.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned, we can get to that level of prediction. It's going to take some time, but we're looking into it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
It's something that's on our roadmap for sure.
Well, one of the last things to cover here that I'd like to talk through is the increased value of an authentic experience with self, with you, when people are dealing with the digital. So, in our earlier conversations or separate conversations, we talked about maybe this is easiest to see in these performers today. If somebody sees a digital version, if they're watching it on television, or they see them and they listen to their CD or their music and they're hearing a digital version of that artist, how much more they appreciate and desire to have the kinetic experience with that person in a concert that they pay $500, $2,000 to have that moment with 50,000 other people just to be there. There's an application you talk through that may be there as well, all the way down to the individual person here that might be able to portray themselves with a digital version of themselves in order to show that value of those people that might really value the authentic time, knowing that time is something that we all have that's very limited. You have to pick and choose and hopefully be spending that with people who value it the most. Is that what, walk us through it? Hopefully I didn't convolute that more than you intended when we started talking about it.
No, I'll try to simplify it a bit.
Thanks, brother. Thank you.
So when it comes down to the digital twin, it is a digital representation of you, right? Um, and the best way to think of it is it's the voice inside your head that you wish you would want people to share, that you would want people to get access to. This idea of a digital twin started with my 4-year-old daughter playing with her iPad, and I said to myself, I want her to have me like this forever, right? So it started from a very personal place, a personal story, and my story to add to that was I was divorced, right, at the time. So we had just gotten divorced about 2 years earlier. So I felt like I was missing out on like half of her life, right?
Right.
And so I was like, okay, this is also a way for her to always connect and make up for lost time. There was a few things going on inside my head at the time. Ultimately, what I realized that it's also very useful for me, this digital twin. It's not just about her. It's really about me and how I can use this data to grow, to learn about myself, to improve, and make myself an A player. Back to that kind of context. And what's interesting, around the time of COVID, I realized I was using, the only thing I could do is go run in the park, right? Couldn't work out, but I got one of those running apps. And I noticed that, you track your run and it's like, okay, you run this many miles in this much time. Some days are faster, some days are slower. You start kind of motivating yourself on the improvement. because it's those little improvements that keep you
Yeah.
coming back, right?
Yeah.
It's not the six pack that you never get. It's like,
What? The dad bod's here to stay, huh?
that's a huge bod. The dad bod is here to stay. It's the fact that you used to run a mile in 10 minutes, now you do it in 6,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And maybe
You
you
can
don't
see
get
it. You
past that
can
6
see
or
what
5
you're
minute
doing.
mark,
Yeah.
but you see the improvement over time. Now
Yeah.
imagine you go and look at your life. And you can say, wow, when I was 25, I was like this. When I'm 45, I was like that. When I lost my job, I was really, you start seeing that timeline of your life.
Yeah.
And it's quite powerful when you see it on the day of and you're getting this daily feedback. But you take a step back and you see the year, the 2, 3 years, the 10, 20 years. Wow, I've changed. And that's okay. Right? It's part of growing up. It's part of becoming wiser,
Yeah.
or maybe not so wise.
Right.
One of the things people struggle with is you might have a loss in the family. You might have a divorce. You might have gone through a war. You might have done so many things that change you, and you don't realize it, right? And I think within the business world, it's very important to remember human resources. The first word there is human. You know, we're not a resource. It's just it should really called human productivity, or or
Yeah.
just human.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we have to keep in mind that we're part of that person's journey as leaders in an organization, as a boss. And what impact do you have on your people? Right. I was telling Tony earlier, I was like, when people start in the company, I always ask them, what's your personal goal? And how can we align those goals to the company goals? Because this way we grow together.
Right.
Right. And that's the most important thing. And you can track that and say, you know what, you were a shy guy, not very open. But look, man, you've done the trainings, da da da. 2 years later, you're, leading a team, your openness is off the charts. You're not so neurotic anymore. You're not as aggressive.
You
It's
gel
it's
with the
quite,
team better. Yeah, but I mean,
yeah,
like you've got tighter teams. You've taken the distractions maybe in that Tiger team and moved them to other teams where they're not a distraction. They're a value. They're an asset.
yeah.
It's a
And
resource to
ultimately,
work
you
for.
can show them not only you
Yeah.
feel, yeah, I feel like I'm more part of the team, but you can say, look, Tony, but look at your data. You are 20% more
Yeah.
open and 5% less neurotic, whatever the number is.
Yeah.
you know, and that's just a reference point. It doesn't mean
Yeah.
anything but just a little pat on the back, right?
Well, but you start. You
Or
could.
check.
It's not a leap to tie. Pay performance into progress, right? Of people being, instead of just output and pay moving into output, but now you can tie that to them becoming a better version of themselves. Some of the softer skills and them achieving those goals, that those well-rounded goals are honestly what also benefit the organization. And you actually pragmatically and in the data can see that it is benefiting the organization and it's attributable back into that individual. It can build and just maybe even extend the value that people really have in the ecosystem they find themselves in. And maybe you know what I think you're onto the cusp of in the front, and it's the front end. You are early for your time, brother, but I'm happy to be on this run with you. I'm happy to be on the ride with you. I think you're starting to point out a way that we start to move to the relationship. This can open the door to really evolve into a more healthy relationship between the business, between the leadership in the business, and between the employees in the business, so that it's really that team orientation instead of everybody's just kind of trying to get their take and where it's going to come from it. I
Yeah,
really
and
like where you're headed.
it ultimately comes down to, how do we help people on their journey?
Yeah.
Right? Don't expect that they're going to stay forever, and it's okay.
Right. Right.
Right?
Right.
It's okay.
Where do our paths cross for that period of time where there's benefit to it and know where to go off? And knowing too that there's a way to see that, I think makes it easier for people to ideate that day. The same way that as a good business leader, you start with a business plan, which is honestly how you're going to break up the company at the back end, right? I mean, that's what you're writing inside those organizational documents, so that once you've seen that, okay, well, this is how we part ways in a healthy way off of this, or if it gets sideways, how we get us back to healthy, which allows us now to just focus on this and what
Mm.
we're here to achieve and where we go. I think you've got some.
When it comes to business plan, I always like Mike Tyson's. Like everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face.
That's right. That's right. So they get punched in the without a doubt. That's right.
But you got to have a plan. You know what I mean? You got to get a plan. You're going to get punched in the face and then
Amen.
see
Amen
how
to
you
that.
bob and weave. You know?
Well, Emil, hey man, I really appreciate the time you spent breaking just these issues down and talking through sourcing these A players. Really looking forward to seeing what you guys continue to do over there at Mindbank. Can you share with us one more time where can our other business leaders, where can they find you?
Yeah, they can definitely reach out to us on Twitter, LinkedIn, and every other social media channel you can imagine. The easiest is definitely our website, or you can definitely email me directly, Emil@mindbank.ai. Very simple. And
And
we
that
can definitely talk about how we can integrate Mindbank within your organization and other things, of course.
wonderful. And that's Emil, EMIL at mindbank.ai. Rock on. Okay. Emil,
Awesome.
again, thank you, brother, for sharing your time, talents, and treasures with us today. God bless you.
Thank you, Tony. Thanks for having me.